Karen's voice was a foghorn, blasting across the lake like she owned the water itself. I'd seen her type before, entitled, loud, and convinced the world spun on her axis, but this time, she'd picked the wrong dock to claim. It was a crisp autumn morning when I first spotted her waddling down my private dock, her oversized floral dress flapping like a warning flag. My name's Ethan, and that dock had been in my family for 3 generations, built by my grandfather's hands on this quiet stretch of Lake Willow. It was my sanctuary, where I'd fish with my son, Caleb, or sit with my wife, Lila, watching the sunset paint the water gold. But Karen had other plans. She stormed onto the weathered planks, her phone already out, live streaming to some faceless audience about public access rights and selfish landowners. I was hauling firewood from the shed when Caleb, all of 16 and braver than most, jogged over, his face tight with worry. "Dad," she's saying, "the dock's hers to use. Says it's public property." I dropped the logs and strode toward the water, Lila trailing behind, her brow furrowed. Karen was mid-rant, her chins wobbling as she waved a meaty finger at the no trespassing sign I'd nailed up last spring. "This is public land," she bellowed, her voice echoing off the pines. "You can't gatekeep a lake. You greedy little man." Greedy? Me? The guy who'd spent years maintaining this dock, paying taxes on the land, and never once bothered the neighbors. I felt my jaw tighten, but I kept my cool. "Ma'am," I said, stepping onto the dock, "this is private property. My family's owned it since the 1950s. You need to leave." Karen's eyes narrowed, her sneer dripping with contempt. "Oh, honey," she said, her tone syrupy with mockery. "I've lived here for 2 years, and I know my rights. This dock's for everyone. Check the county records." She thrust her phone closer, clearly loving the drama for her viewers. Caleb muttered under his breath, and Lila grabbed my arm, whispering, "Ethan, don't let her bait you." But Karen wasn't done. She started pacing, her flip-flops slapping the wood, declaring she'd report me to the authorities for obstructing public access. I could have laughed if I wasn't so furious. Public access to my backyard. The confrontation ended with Karen storming off, vowing to take this to court. I thought she was bluffing, just another loudmouth blowing steam. But a week later, a process server showed up at my door with a lawsuit. Karen, whose full name I learned was Karen Dolores Whitaker, had filed a claim asserting the dock was on public land and that I was illegally restricting access. She'd even rallied a few locals, mostly her cronies from the neighborhood Facebook group, to back her story, claiming they'd always used the dock. The audacity burned me up. But Lila, ever the voice of reason, said, "We'll fight this. Ethan, we've got the deeds." The next month was a blur of paperwork and stress. I dug through my grandfather's old files, pulling out surveys, deeds, and tax records proving the land and the dock had been ours since 1953. My lawyer, a no-nonsense guy named Tom, was confident. "She's got no case," he said, flipping through the documents. "But people like this, they lie through their teeth and hope you fold." I wasn't folding. Not for Karen. Not for anyone. Court day arrived. A gray November morning that matched my mood. The courtroom was small, smelling of polished wood and stale coffee. Karen sat across from us, her bulk spilling over the chair, smirking like she'd already won. She'd dressed up for the occasion, another garish dress, this time with a pearl brooch that screamed, "I'm important." Caleb sat beside me, sketching in his notebook to stay calm, while Lila squeezed my hand under the table. The judge, a stern woman with silver hair, called the case Whitaker v. Thompson, property dispute. Karen's lawyer, a slick guy with too much hair gel, went first. He painted a picture of Karen as a community advocate, fighting for equal access to Lake Willow. Karen took the stand, her voice quivering with fake emotion as she spun a tale about lifelong residents using the dock for fishing and picnics. Mr. Thompson's signs and threats, she said, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, have robbed us of our rights. I nearly choked. Threats. I'd asked her to leave. Politely. Once. Her witnesses, two neighbors I barely knew, backed her up, claiming they'd used the dock for years. It was a performance, and Karen was the star. Then it was our turn. Tom presented the deeds, the surveys, the tax records, ironclad proof the land was mine. I took the stand, keeping my voice steady as I explained the dock's history, my family's care for it, and Karen's trespassing. She never asked permission, I said. She just showed up, filming, yelling, claiming what's mine. Caleb testified next, his voice shaking but clear, recounting how Karen had mocked us that day. Lila's testimony was short but sharp, detailing the harassment we'd faced online since Karen's livestream went viral. The judge's questions were pointed. She asked Karen to clarify when she'd used the dock before. Karen stammered, claiming decades of access, despite admitting she'd only moved to town 2 years ago. The judge's eyes narrowed. Ms. Whitaker, she said, your witnesses claim they've used this dock since the 1990s. Yet you say you've only lived here since 2023. How do you explain this? Karen's face reddened, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Her lawyer tried to pivot, but the judge wasn't having it. She called for a recess to review the evidence. That's when things unraveled. During the break, one of Karen's witnesses, a nervous guy named Gary, approached Tom in the hallway. I didn't want to lie, he whispered. She pressured me, said it was for the community. Gary admitted he'd never used the dock. Karen had coached him and the other witness to back her story. Tom relayed this to the judge when court resumed, and Gary, looking like he might faint, confirmed it on the stand. The other witness, a woman named Barb, crumbled under cross-examination, admitting she'd only heard the dock was public from Karen. The judge's ruling was swift. The dock was mine. No question. Karen's claim was dismissed, and I was awarded court costs. But the real blow came when the judge referred Karen's testimony to the district attorney for perjury. Ms. Whitaker, the judge said, her voice like steel. You've wasted this court's time with falsehoods. You'll answer for that. Karen's smirk was gone, replaced by a look of pure panic as the bailiff escorted her out. A week later, I got the call. Karen had been arrested for perjury, her lies exposed in a spectacular fall. The aftermath was quiet but satisfying. The neighborhood Facebook group went silent on the matter, and Karen's live streams vanished. Caleb, Lila, and I went back to our dock, fishing under the stars like nothing had happened. But something had changed. I'd always thought people like Karen got away with their nonsense, bulldozing through life with no consequences. Not this time. The dock was still ours. The lake was still peaceful. And Karen, she was learning the hard way that truth doesn't bend to bluster. There's a lesson here. One I'll tell Caleb when he's older: stand your ground. But do it with facts, not fury. Karen thought she could rewrite reality with a loud voice and a camera. She forgot that lies, like Doc's, need solid ground to stand on. Hers crumbled, and she fell. The end.